Now it's time for Straight on the Point with Jesse T. from some undisclosed location somewhere in the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Jesse T.
Well, it's good to be back with you. The Brown Beauty is back on duty. It's time for the Jesse T Show. And, of course, we're halfway through the week, which means it's time for Round Up, Wound Up! That's right.
Out of control. He's out of
Tarzan.
control, as
Yes,
you can see.
I'm already out of control. What's going on with all this stuff going on here, man? Come on, turn around.
As usual, the first 20 minutes of the
go.
Jesse T Show
Yes.
is all about you.
You like my new hairdo? It's a natural
Fixing
style.
technicalities and stuff.
That's right. Yes, and of course,
Technical issues.
always technical issues. Like there we go. Finally, all right, there we are.
Oh, he has to see himself. That's what it is.
No, I gotta see you, the very handsome and daredevil, gorgeous man with a master tan that never goes anywhere without looking as dark and beautiful as he is. Michelangelo.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm taking all donations to the Michelangelo Fund.
Yes, and you need that for the tan man. That's right, because you got to keep that tan up, and it's awful overcast here in Southern California today. So let's move this over here like this here as we there we go. There we go. And Dan the man, look at Dan the man. Look, you got to kind of move in here. You see
which way?
I look kind of dark in that video.
Yeah, you do.
And I look white over here. And I might look Mexican over here. What's going on?
I mean, I changed the angle on you.
Oh, these
you
different angles.
The angle of the dangle.
Now we got more cameras than that.
Yeah,
Holy
okay.
cow.
There we go. All right, there we go. Those two guys. But
We got enough cameras.
I'm not. Now I'm in it, but Dan's not in it. Dan, right? Dan.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. Yes, Dan, the man.
In the background.
The ladies' man.
Oh, my
and
God.
somewhere in this misforgotten world, David Shark Freilich is
Call
out
in,
there.
call in, David.
Are we doing another satellite feed?
And a
I
big
don't
zoom
know.
to you.
I have no idea what's going on today.
If that's the case, I can stay home and give you a phone call too, homie.
I know.
You got to drive all the way from the valley.
Well, yeah, you do, because there's nothing like having you live in person.
Live at
Gas
five.
money. Gas money.
We have to
Is there
have-
a budget this year for gas money? We're in
Boy, I tell
2018.
you, man. Yeah, we
Can a
are.
brother get a donut? I can't get a donut.
You had
Can't get
some
a cup of
cookies
coffee.
out there, man. What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Those
you were
weren't
the
your
cookie monster.
Don't
You're like-
you be taking credit for them cookies. That weren't you.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, Jesse.
And then look at this. Now, this one's dead too.
Here
Dead.
we go.
The batteries are all. What? Why is everything dying on me?
I
What
think we got
the-
more.
People are chiming in. Look.
I think we got more important things to talk about.
424-227-9461 is the phone call. Hi, who's on the line with me?
Hi, is this the MS-13 gang?
Oh no,
God,
no. I don't think we have time for vibrator girl here. Hey, I just want to know something. What do you look like?
From the waist up or down?
I want to know inside and all around, baby.
It's kind of top secret. I'm rather a private girl, but I don't mind spreading the news.
Oh, do you spread the news around?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
Sorry.
figured.
Don't touch me there.
Don't be sorry. What's that saying? Don't be sorry, be ready, or something like that? I don't know. Okay. Does anybody know? Look it. Wait a second, girl. Be quiet a second. Does anybody know my password? Can somebody help me with my password, please?
Leg spreader.
Open sesame. Yes.
Hocus pocus.
There's a very important reason why I have to have the password to my Facebook, because there's something very important we're going to talk about here, and I'm going. If I have to pull out the print, then it's I can barely see it, because you see I did back myself up. Look at. Yes, I printed it off. Yes, we're going to talk about Quincy Jones today. Did you hear that article that Quincy Jones did, that interview he did just a couple of days ago? Oh, my goodness. It's a tell-all story about everybody he's known in his 80 years of being the greatest musician of all time. It's really, really juicy, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I've got something. Young lady on the telephone, let me talk to me about how your feelings are on the DACA.
I think it's like when Jesse Jackson commented on what he thought of defense. He said he thought it should be painted the same color as the house.
Why can't we hear?
Well, because you got to plug that one in.
I mean, it'd be nice if I,
plug that thing in. See, we get going here. This was Facebook.com/Jesse Torrero, Instagram Live at Jesse Torrero, and I get feedback. There we go. Now we can hear you. My goodness, this is a million and one things happen here in the transition. I found it. Yes, I did, and I find it. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's jump into the roundup right here. We're going to go fast and furious here. Okay? Here we go. Immigration. Of course, immigration is on everybody's mind. DACA, the Dreamers. I've got one question. Who's more important? Illegal criminals who are dreamers. Wait a minute. Illegal criminals who are dreamers, or American citizens who are dreamers. Who gets first precedence? Michael?
It's got to be the illegal.
I'd have to go with the American dreamers, of course.
Then why are we even talking about the dreamers that are here illegally?
It's a political issue right now. Everybody seems to think that once they get here, they have all these rights. And, and some should know that, your rights, you don't automatically have rights, if you're not a U.S. citizen. I mean, that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we went down to Mexico, I'm sure I wouldn't have the rights in Mexico that I have here. They'd throw my ass in jail.
Do you think you could drink a lot
I wouldn't even go to trial.
Do you think you could, yeah, right. You could drink a lot of tequila one night on a Friday night and then go crash into somebody in an intersection in Mexico?
And that's it. They can do whatever they want with you. Their rules, you know what I mean? So, they got to bear with that, Every country's got their rules, and that happens to be the rule here.
So your stand on DACA is that we should just get rid of them?
Well, I wouldn't say get rid of them.
70%.
I'd come up with a better solution. And I agree that whoever's here is here. If you're gonna shut down the borders, then from this point on, don't
70% of all Americans,
retroactive.
70% of all Americans want a solution of some sort that seems to be fair to them. Dan DeMann, what are your thoughts on that?
Everybody wants to rule the world, but as far as the DACA, dreaming. I'm always dreaming.
Yes.
Till my dreaming comes true.
I like that. That's right.
I
Absolutely.
think there should be some fair distribution of the DACAs, but American-born dreamers should be first.
I think they should all just be shipped home.
That's impossible.
All around the world. If you're here illegally, send them all home. And if they're send the criminals home first.
Send all the criminals.
Well,
like the guy who just got in trouble for killing that fireman.
But wait a minute,
the football player.
Here. And how about the illegals that are here 44 times? They get deported.
Who's the real criminal? The little guy, the little Mexican guy coming off the border. That's the criminal.
Yes.
You think that's the criminal?
Absolutely.
Shit, the criminals all the way up in the White House, man. What are you talking about the criminal?
I'm not talking about that criminal. But I'm not talking about that criminal. I'm talking about the immigration.
You ain't talking about them criminals.
No.
Them criminals are controlling and killing everybody off.
Well, look you're right, because they've been kicking this problem down the street for 50 years. This illegal immigration has been kicked down the street since the end of the Vietnam War.
So why is it so important now?
Well, why it's so important now?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Because American citizens
You said it's been going
aren't
on
getting
for
the
50
jobs
years.
that they should get.
You think
because
that's
American
what it is?
citizens aren't getting the type of education they should get. It's being taxed here in California because we have so many illegals in California that the system is being overrun and overtaxed. The welfare systems, the social services systems, the hospitals, all of this stuff is being taxed, and we taxpayers in this country are paying for it. That's why. We shouldn't be paying for illegals.
So you'd rather pay for a war then?
No, I'd rather ship them all home.
Because that's where the real tax dollars are going.
Well, I'll tell you what. If a war means to make America great and powerful and let the empire survive, absolutely. Thank you very much. I got no problem with that. Well, America is an empire. I like waking up in the morning having 14 brands of tea. I like waking up in the morning, opening up my refrigerator. I like waking up in the morning. Yeah, but when you're in other parts of the world, like 43 nations I've been in, you don't have that. And you never have that. And the reason why we have that is because America's military is so great, and we have sovereign laws that make us a sovereign nation, right? Under God, indivisible. That's what we are. And that's part of the problem. We've lost the basic creed of what Americanism is all about, and illegals shouldn't be here. Bang!
Amen, hoorah.
That doesn't make no sense, man. This country was built on illegals.
No, it was
and
not.
immigrants.
It was not built on illegal
What are you talking
immigrants.
about?
It was built on people that came to this country under proper law. The immigrants that made this nation, the Italians, the Polish, the Irish, the Germans, the French,
What
the
about
Scottish.
the ones that were here?
What about the ones that were here?
What happened to
They
them?
came here legally. It was an England
No, the ones that
sovereign.
were already here.
It was an English colony. That because of the Protestant Reformation, the Protestants, who were non-believers of Christ the way the Catholic Church wanted them to be, were able to come here as pilgrims and start their own religious ideology and weren't bothered. But we paid taxes to England. This was an England province, just like Hong Kong was, and Australia and India and New Zealand and South Africa.
After they killed all the Indians off, right?
We didn't kill any Indians when we got here.
No, the
Okay.
Europeans didn't kill the Indians off? And
Not
took the
when
land?
we didn't kill Indians to get here. We landed here. The Western Europeans landed here.
Landed? What do you mean landed?
Landed on ships. They landed in Maine and Massachusetts, and that's where they came in. And they spent 150 years coming down the coast of the East Coast. By the time Washington was born, it was 100 years almost. It's like 80 years before Washington was born and the nation was born. So you know, in terms of Western migration, that didn't happen till after America broke away from England, which we never did really break away. We're still a province of England in a lot of ways. But the point is, so that's the way it is. And, you know, I got no problem being a conquering empire. Thank you very much. I like America. I like sending SpaceX off and a Tesla to Mars.
And a roadster.
I mean, I got no problem with that.
Well, listen, Jesse, I mean, you sound like quite the patriot today, man. But let me tell you, man, you know, this country is boiling down to the haves and the have-nots, man. And that's just plain and simple. And it really don't have anything to do with immigration. You know what I mean? Because there's so many jobs that these people are willing to do that, you know, your average American is not going to break their back and do.
No, they'll do it.
No, man.
Yes, they will.
They've never done it.
They won't
They've
do it because they're being done by other people.
About?
What are you
why
talking
they always
about?
brought the slaves
Grapes of Wrath.
and everything else.
Grapes
because they
of
want
Wrath.
everybody else to break their ass out
Have
there
you ever
in the
read
fields.
Grapes of Wrath?
Not because they're going to break their own asses.
Do you know what
on the
Grapes
field.
of Wrath was about?
It
The
ain't
Dust
changed.
Bowl, the Dust Bowl of the mid America that put the North Dakota, the Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma under 6 feet of dust because the topsoil blew away. And all those people moved to California. They were in the fields along with the people that were here that were Mexican when this was Mexico. Okay, so they were in the fields with them, and African Americans
So did you
were
say
too.
yourself? It was Mexico. So
Yeah, it
how
was.
if it was Mexico? Why you want to
Because
get the
this is
Mexicans
our
out?
nation now, and they sold it to us at the
they got duped.
No, at the Treaty of Guadalupe in 1843, right here at Cahuenga, they signed the treaty, which gave us Texas, piece of Oklahoma, piece of Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, and a piece of Oregon. The Russians owned Washington, Idaho, and Montana. That was Russian province at one time. Up there, Siberia, Alaska, northeastern part of Canada, or western part of Canada, that was all under Russian, just like the French and the Germans. It's too bad. Western Anglo-Europeans conquered the world. Okay, so I gotta feel sorry for anybody else? Sorry, I don't.
God bless
Well, on
America.
that note,
What happened to that girl on the phone?
What do you think?
what do you think, listeners?
What do you think?
Anyone? Is anyone out
Call
there?
her in her.
I don't know.
Earth to
I don't
Shark,
hear
come in,
anybody
please.
out there.
Earth to Shark.
I don't know. Maybe he's not there. Shark, are you there?
I would like to say something if y'all could zip your trap for a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we're all immigrants, but we came here legally. I don't agree with the people that come here illegally and sponge off the damn system and create what, a third more recipients of welfare in the last 8 years under the, I don't know what you call him or it or, but if we don't do something soon, it's going to keep sinking the ship, and then how quick can you bail it out depending on how much is coming in? It's like ridiculous, and now they've got all the rights, and are they deported?
Well, it's a
Are they naturalized? Have they taken the test? Have they sworn the oath?
No. All that is.
Well, that needs to happen, or they need to vamonos.
Look at
you become a citizen. I mean, you can visit here. I've got friends. Yeah. They visit from all over the countries. They've got their passport. They get it stamped. They're allowed 6 months, maybe a year. Then they've got to leave unless they're on a work visa. But these ones that sneak across the border in tunnels and back of vans, and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, I've got to have love for them, but that doesn't mean I've got to pay for them.
So, the other issue that is coupled really tightly with this right now is MS-13, the gang. And these illegals from El Salvador, Guatemala, it started in El Salvador. That's where MS-13, and it's spread through the central part of America, Central America, and now 30,000 strong in America, an army of 30,000. Every major city has 2,000 or 3,000, just about.
And they're armed.
And they're armed, and they're very, very volatile, very dangerous, brutal, violent people. They chop your head off. You know what their matrix is? Their method, their business model is rape, murder, human trafficking, drugs, guns, and terrorism. They say it right there. They swear to that when they come in. Now, most of them are all illegal. They come across the border when they came across through Mexico in the late 1980s, the older ones. Okay, when El Salvador had all those civil wars. So, I mean, that's part of the problem, too.
Have them at the Coliseum have a shootout amongst each other.
Well, we could do that, but, that's not, the reality of it is what do you do about those people? What do you do about these violent, hideous, horrible people? Okay?
Send them to the front lines.
What do you do about the guy who's been deported 44 times? He holds the record. And then another one is 40, and then it goes down to 37, 35, 33, and 32. There's a list out there now of the most deported guys in America that have come back. One of them just killed a firefighter. Now,
and a football player.
So, we move off from the dreamers. We move off to them. Hey, look it. The plan, give them 10 years, 12 years to become naturalized citizens. Forgive the fact that they had half their life to do it. Okay, forgive the fact that their parents were too stupid to get them to do it, or afraid, or whatever they were. It's irrelevant. They didn't do it. The bottom line, give them an opportunity, 10, 12 years to become naturalized citizens, serve in the military, in 4 years become a naturalized citizen, do something along that line, and let them be proud Americans. But if they're not going to do that, and they're arguing against that right now, because they want amnesty, they want a free ticket to paradise. I'm sorry. That's my feelings on it. What say you, Michael?
I think it's all very complicated, man. It's just not that simple, man. There's just too many. There's too many ties. You know what I mean? There's just too many families and too many ties, and it like you said, it's grown so exponentially that how do you fix it? How do you really fix it? Build a wall, keep them out. How do you fix it? Keep the ones we have here. How do you fix it? Throw the ones that were criminals out. How do you fix it? It goes on and on and on. You know what I mean? We could be here and rack our brains trying to figure it out.
Well, you brought something up about the wall, which I think is very important, because at the very minimum, the very least, the wall sets up. It is a reference point. It is saying, look, America is going to protect its sovereignty now. We're building a wall. It's going to cost $24 billion. Guys, they just lost $800 billion at the Pentagon a week and a half ago that they can't find. $800 billion were reported to the president that the Pentagon lost over the last few years. $24 billion is a squeak. Is a drop compared to $800 billion that they lost, that they wrote right off or went into somebody's pocket.
Right, exactly.
For 24-karat gold toilets.
Yeah, they lost it already.
Right, sure. Okay, so $24 billion is chump change when you talk about the the $12 trillion budget that America has every year. So, you know, in that respect, so build a wall. It's an icon. It says we're not going to take it anymore. What was that network movie with Albert Finney?
Oh,
it was network.
I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore.
Right. Yell out your window. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. You got a 40-foot wall, and you got extra security, high tech, and guys on horses and Polarises and whatever. And then you start with a new immigration policy. I've said this right from the beginning. Our immigration policy is 100 years too old. And you have to do something because we have to stop the flow. We have to say to the world, this is our country, and we're not going to let you take advantage of us anymore.
And you have to keep the terrorists out. That's another big threat.
So, and I think not only is our problem on the southern border, but I think it's soon to be on the northern as well. And I think one of the reasons that they're not becoming citizens is because they get more if they're not.
They do. You have a terrible... you have, up in Washington, you have Pakistani and Indian people come into Canada, cross British Columbia, and into Washington and get their green cards, okay? Then in Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan, you have a terrible problem from Muslims of the Islamic faith coming across that border, getting their green cards, refugee status, and what have you, and not. Okay, so you have those problems and those issues too. One group brings Sharia law, which is totally ludicrous. I mean, what do you think about Sharia law, Michael? I mean, what would if you were living in a town up in Wisconsin and all of a sudden 10 years ago, now there's Sharia law? How would you feel about that? Because that's how they're acting.
I mean, that's all, you know, that's all great and dandy. I mean, everybody has a right to, you know, to worship in whatever, you know, but, you know, you can't push their worship on.
Well, yeah, but Sharia law
else.
says that a woman has to be close. She can't drive. They can have multiple wives. They can beat their women. They can abuse their children. They can cut their hands off, cut their feet off, cut their heads off, stone them to death, bury them in dirt. I mean, if you study Sharia law, these are just some of the basics of Sharia. It's so anti-democracy and anti-American.
Well, they should know that they can't implement their laws on our land.
Well, look at England. In 10 years, they're saying England is going to be a Muslim nation. That's what they're saying. Germany, too. That's a frightening thought. Those places have the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And Sweden, and France, and Norway, and Brussels.
All right, so, you know, if you start talking about that, problems that, you know, are almost impossible to solve, but I think if you keep it simple, build a wall, give them a plan, something like I said, or a variation of that, to allow the ones that are here, they're here, send all the criminal illegals back to where they came from, and I don't care, not just Mexico, send them back to Thailand, wherever they're from. It doesn't make Russia. It doesn't make any difference. Germany, it doesn't make any difference where they're from. Send them all back, and then put the clamp down and say, this is what you got to do. Too bad, dreamers. You got to go back, too. You got one chance. You join the military, or you have 10 years to get yourself to become a citizen. It's not amnesty. You got to pay some price, some tax, and you got to pay some education fees, and you got to make it happen. You know, nothing is free in life. California Bakery, right here, can refuse now, according to the First Amendment, the California Bakery can refuse to make cakes for same-sex marriages. Now, remember that story that was in the news about a year and a half ago? Yeah. It finally has gone up the channels of the court, and they won at one level. One level. It's still got to go higher up.
Which is what?
The California, these two people. These
I understand that. What was the verdict on it?
Well, the verdict at this lower court was they said that they don't have to serve.
They don't.
They can serve anybody they want to serve.
That's right.
Because it's a First Amendment right.
That's right.
Well, that's going to go to the next level of the courts. What are your feelings on that? If you own a business and somebody
then
walks in that you don't want to serve,
you have the right as the business owner. You have the right to choose to do it or not to do it.
So I go now and run away to my lawyer and say I'm gay, right? And you didn't want to service because I'm gay. You told me.
No, I don't want to service you because I don't want to serve. Same-sex marriages or whatever.
Okay, that's what they said, and they got in trouble
for it. It could be for any.
I don't want to serve you because you got tennis, because you got sandals on and no shirt.
Exactly.
Right. Shouldn't you have the right as a business owner?
Yes, as a businessman, you should have the right to refuse service to anyone.
Yes, sir. You're not
Period.
forced. You're not forced. You shouldn't be forced to do business with
Because
them.
you're not
But
forced
they
to
did
come
that
to my
years
store.
ago. They
Sexuality or religion or anything, stuff like that comes into play. For
Right.
sure, yeah.
What's that?
I said they did that when it all started under the what's his name, Mr. Hussein administration. They shut down bakeries in Indianapolis or somewhere along there because the people that did own the businesses refused to do that. So my question to you is, since Muslims hate homosexuals, why don't the gays go and demand that the Muslim bakeries bake their cake?
Because under Sharia law, they're going to get stoned to death until the police show up and beat down, because those people believe they have a right to hang, kill, destroy, torture people who are homosexual or are not of their same sexual preference.
No, you abide by the same rules. A Muslim bakery must bake a cake for a homosexual couple.
Hey, look at. If that's the law of the land and it's America, but a person has a right to say no to. And as far as I'm concerned, in a business, you have a right to say no to anybody who comes into your store. Period. You don't have to serve them. They didn't have to come in your store. They can go to the store around the corner. As far as I'm concerned, as long as it's not targeted towards racial, sexual preference, and a sign says out front,
Right.
no darkies allowed.
Yeah.
No kissing boys allowed.
Yeah.
No hand holding girls allowed.
Yeah.
Like Barney's Beanery back in the day.
Right, Barney's Beanery. All right, so blowing through this issue, in terms of that, hey man, SpaceX sends up the big rocket ship yesterday, and it blows beautifully. It just absolutely perfect. Privately owned. Does that show up NASA, or does that tell the American government, hey, Elon Musk, who's not as rich as the American government, can do it. Look what we can do. And they blow up their Tesla Roadster. They send it to Mars, but actually they did such a good thing, it's going to the asteroid belt. So, I mean, was that a sight to see? I don't know if any of you guys saw that. That was unbelievable how that thing just blew up. What do the flat earthers believe about that? Because we all know about flat earthers.
Flat
right?
earthers.
What is this flat earther stuff, guys? Where did this come from?
God only knows.
Michelangelo?
I have no idea where that comes from. I don't know why would anybody even suggest such a thing, but whatever. But I'm on to you with the SpaceX. I think that's going to be great. There's going to be some. There's going to be. There's going to be access to the average folk. To
if you had the money to buy a ticket, would you take a trip on a
shit? And I won't come back.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah,
Leave me up there for 100 years, man.
Yeah,
Whatever it takes.
absolutely.
Yeah, but if Michelangelo ends up on Mars, he's going to have Venus envy.
Doo-doo.
How do you know this, damn the man?
Just a lucky guess. He's no rookie, that's for damn sure.
So I think that's going to be cool, man. I mean, Virgin Airlines billionaire, he's setting up a gig like that. Elon Musk is setting, and there's two others that are setting up gigs to give space rides. Right now, they're going to be super expensive, but it'll come down in 10 years. I would go up in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Mean, you talk about a roller coaster ride.
Seeing just the outside of the Earth would be just amazing.
But flat earthers think that over the Earth there's this like a force field that we've never been able to penetrate through. So their idea is that every time they try to penetrate through it, they hit the force field and they get bounced back like a marble. Now, where do these flat earthers come up with this?
Well, that's because the politicians have proved that the Earth is crooked.
Ain't that no lie? 6 years in a row, LA has won the distinction for being the most congested city in the world. 6 years in a row.
Yeah, and getting worse.
Worst experience on the freeway trying to get somewhere, Michelangelo, or something crazy you've seen somebody doing that you just shake your head and go, my God, I got to get away from these people.
Well, actually, just a funny thing. The other day, a guy just came. I was at a light at an intersection. and this kid comes flying out of nowhere in this Toyota, and he's, you know, and all traffic was stopped in all four directions, and this kid is just doing donuts in the middle of the, I kid you not, in the middle of the intersection, he's doing donuts, and everybody can't move because he's in the middle of the donuts, so people start to back off and back off and back off. He's spinning out of control. Finally comes to a stop, jumps out of the car, starts jumping on the hood, starts picking, and I'm thinking, Jesus, this guy's been, you know, this was going on for quite a few minutes.
Come on, a car doing donuts
no cops.
No cops.
Nothing. Gets in, jams down the street, makes a U-turn, jams the other. Oh, my God, it was the craziest thing. And all I was doing was like, let me avoid this guy.
Please don't hit my car, man. Don't hit my car.
I was like, no, I do not want to be part of this.
Right.
Please, please. So I was just trying to get out of the way. But that was just
people
nuts.
don't realize around the country what we have to deal with driving. We talk about it all the time, but the insanity on the roads reflects our society, Dan the man.
Well, while he was doing donuts, the cops were at a donut shop.
Ain't that the truth, man? What's the craziest thing that you've seen driving, you know, in the California highways lately?
Back in the 70s, I thought I was getting in a gas line for the gas at the gas stations, and instead I got in a funeral procession.
And you couldn't get out, right?
I couldn't get out.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing that I got pulled over the other day, because the CHP guy caught me red-handed on the phone. And he looked at me, I looked at him, I said, "Oh well."
Well,
right?
a guy caught me too.
What am I going to do? Right.
Didn't give me a ticket.
Well, he pulled me over, and then we had a great time, and we talked, and I got myself out of that ticket. Like, I'm pretty good at that. But one of the things that happen more than anything now is people get preoccupied with all this new technology in the new cars. Mm-hmm. I mean, what is that going to do to L.A. driving 5 years from now with all these, these screens all over your car, your windshield adaptations, all this technology going? I mean, would you really take an automatically driven car by computer? Would you really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you do it on an airplane? Because they're saying that the planes are going to be flying.
It could be done. It could be done.
Little drones.
Yeah, it could be done.
That kind of freaks me out. I don't know.
The technology is there. They're not just, you know what I mean? They're just slowly immigrating it, but that technology has been there.
Do you think it's just making Americans and people dumber? Because now we don't know how to read a map, right?
Can't memorize anything.
We can't memorize
names and
numbers, phone numbers, addresses anymore, names of streets, because we don't use that part of our brain.
Don't know how to get around anymore without the GPS.
Right. How do you get around?
Like, how do I get to 7-Eleven?
Ask anybody on the street, where's east, west, north, or south? And they go, right?
Lost, yeah.
They're totally lost.
The dumbing of America.
So, I mean, automatic driving cars, Uber cars, and Lyft cars that can automatically pick you up and whatever and take you somewhere, that's kind of frightening because it just makes it, what are we going to be good for? Procreating? That's it?
Well, they've got like animated doll sex shops. I think the first one opened in Germany.
Yeah, you got an automatic, you got these AI sex dolls, right? That you can do. I mean, what do they do? Is the idea here, guys, that they really want to depopulate the planet Earth? Is that what they really want to do ultimately? Is that the idea?
Quite possibly.
I've got to tell you, I've had the time of my life with a friend of mine said he had really enjoyed himself. And back to the driving thing, when I got here like 25 years ago, I'd been doing a lot of thrift store shopping. I was into, collecting vinyl, 45s, before laser discs and all this came out, and I got pulled over. I think I had a tail light out, and he said, "Where's my license?" And I said, "It's on the bumper right there in the middle." He goes, "No, your driver's license, smartass." And I showed it to him, and then he looked in my back seat and he saw all these, record players and albums, and he said, "Is that pornographic material?" And I said, "Officer, no way. I don't even own a pornograph."
You know something? And that's about one of the best ways to end that conversation right there.
God.
Quincy Jones. Everybody knows who Quincy Jones is. I wanted to talk about this. He did a tell-all interview.
What did he say?
Oh, my goodness.
About who?
About everybody.
About what?
Oh, everything.
Tell us.
It's a tell-all interview, and it just came out. I got to tell you, the interviewer, and we got to give, the accolades to who gets them. Vulture.com, vulturemagazine.com. They did an interview with Quincy Jones, David Marchesi. David Marchesi. It's almost like Al's last name. Anyhow, your partner, one of your partners in the film business. So it's a great interview. It's riveting. So he asked him, you worked with Michael Jackson more than anyone other than who was not related to him. What's something people didn't understand about him? He asked Quincy Jones. Now, Quincy Jones is simply probably historically going to go down as the Mozart of our time as a composer. And he says, I hate to get into this publicly, but Michael stole a lot of stuff.
Stole what?
Stole
Ideas?
A lot of stuff. He stole a lot of songs, like from Donna Summer, State of Independence, and Billie Jean. He also notes... he goes, Michael was very Machiavellian as they come. So Michael apparently was vicking music from everybody all the time. And now Quincy's going to be 85 years old, and he's got nothing to lose and nothing to gain. He's just telling the truth. He's always been a straight shooter. So how so? Why was he so Machiavellian? And so the reporter asks, and Quincy says, greedy, man, greedy. Don't stop till you get enough. Greedy, man. Greg Philogenius wrote the C section to that song. Michael should have gave him 10% of that song, and he wouldn't do it. Okay? And well, what about outside of music? What misunderstandings about Michael that the public had? Man, I used to kill him about the plastic surgery, man. This is Quincy talking. Quotes. He'd always justify it and say was because some disease he had. Then Quincy says, bullshit, right? And the article goes on like this. How much were his problems wrapped up with his fame? Okay, these are all things we've heard of, right? This coming from the horse's mouth. You mean the way he looked? He had a problem with his looks because his father told him he was ugly and abused him when he was a kid. So what do you expect, man? Then he says, so tell me about the Clintons. And so you just mentioned the Clintons in our discussion. And the reporter says, who are friends of yours? Why is there still such visceral dislike of them? What are other people not seeing in Hillary, for example, that you see? He says, it's because there's a side of her when you keep secrets, they backfire. So apparently she has lots of secrets. And he said, you sure seem to know a lot about the Clintons. He goes, I know too much, man. Too much. And he said, so then he asked him, and now this is interesting. The reporter asked him, well, what kind of stuff do you wish you did not know? And he said, who killed the Kennedy? And so, you know, all the theories about who killed JFK, he knows about it. So what theory? He says, well, who did it? The guy says, Chicago mobster Sam Giancana. The connection was there between Sinatra and the mafia and Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, JFK's father. He was a bad man, Quincy says. He came to Frank to tell him to talk to Giancana about getting votes. Well, and so this is how this interview goes. It's electrifying because this is coming from Quincy Jones, who knows everybody. And was a part of everybody's life because of the great music he did over the years. In that respect, it's a great interview that he talks about, and he goes on and on and on, and it just goes on and on about certain things, like Hendrix. He says about Hendrix, he was supposed to play on my album, Quincy says, and he chickened out. Hendrix chickened out. He was nervous to play with Toots Thielemans, who was probably one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Herbie Hancock, Hubert Laws, and Roland Kirk. Those are some of the scariest motherfuckers, Quincy Jones says, right? Toots was one of the greatest soloists that ever fucking lived, Quincy says about Toots. The cats on my records were the baddest cats in the world, and Hendrix didn't want to play with them. He was afraid. He was chicken.
All right, I'll let him tell it then.
You know, I mean, can you imagine Hendrix being afraid to play with anybody?
No, I can't imagine that.
But he was afraid when Quincy called him to play in Quincy's albums because of these other great jazz guitarists and blues guitarists and rhythm guitarists that Quincy knew. And, when he talked about Giancana, knowing that Giancana killed Kennedy because he was with the Clintons for 8 years in the White House. Quincy was always visiting and talking. He supported the Clintons. And so, this is a guy that knows everybody in the world, but firsthand in one call. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so it's a riveting... what do you think he says about the Beatles?
I could only imagine. Who knows?
I mean, what do you think? Quincy Jones, probably the greatest composer in the last 300 years. Literally, the guy is going to go down as absolutely one of the best historically. He's Beethoven.
What's he saying? What do you say?
This is what he says about the Beatles. They were the worst musicians in the world. This is straight off of Quincy's mouth. They were the worst musicians in the world. They were no playing motherfuckers. Okay?
It was a gimmick.
They were no playing motherfuckers.
No playing motherfuckers.
Okay? He says Paul was the worst bass player I ever heard. Okay?
What about Ringo?
Ringo, don't even get me talking about it. He calls Ringo it, right? I remember once we were in the studio with George Martin. That was the Beatles producer, a genius producer. Okay, he brought all the sounds of the violin and the cello and all the horns and all that to the Beatles music. He said we were in the studio with George Martin and Ringo. Ringo had taken 3 hours for a 4-bar thing he was trying to fix on a song. He couldn't get it, man. We said, "Hey, mate, why don't you go get some lager and lime and some shepherd's pie?" This is all English stuff, right? And take an hour and a half and relax a little bit. Quincy says this to Ringo after 3 hours of trying to little 4-arm beat going, right? And so he says, so he did. And we called Ronnie Verrell one of the greatest jazz drummers of all time. Ronnie was the man. Ronnie came in, and for 15 minutes, he tore it up. Ringo then comes back and says, "George, can you play that back for me one more time?" What I did, Ringo did. And so George did. And Ringo says, "That didn't sound so bad." And Quincy says, and I said, "Yeah, motherfucker, because it ain't you." Wow. Quincy lays down the law about you should hear what he said about Michael Jackson, and what he said about the Clintons, and what he said about Frank Sinatra and Giancana, and what he said about JFK and Joe Kennedy. Oh man, and Quincy was around all of these people. He goes back to the 30s. Okay, he's 85. He goes, what do you think about that? What do you do if you're like Paul McCartney now? You're like in your 70s, right? And you read this article on Quincy. Well, what do you do? How do you say something to Quincy Jones?
Either say it's real or it isn't.
Can you imagine Ringo being told to go out and get a burger, right? Get some lime and some shepherd's pie and a lager, and come back an hour and a half and it's done, and he thinks it's him?
Well, I was never a Beatles fan, so I don't know what the whole Beatle mania was about, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you put some stuff together that worked during that time?
But they were apparently horrible musicians, and it took them a long time to become somewhat decent musicians. And people will argue about Ringo Starr being a drummer. Is he really a drummer even today, or not? Then he gets into some other things which I think are terrific. And I'm bringing this up because, Quincy Jones is an icon of both film, TV, commercials, music, all forms of music, every form of music that was ever created during his lifetime. He has been ultra successful in, and now he's talking straight shit right here, right?
He's talking shit.
Yeah, it's amazing. You should see what he says about today's modern music. It's very unbelievable. This is a great interview out of vulturemagazine.com, and the author just did a terrific interview with Quincy Jones, and he's going to be 85, so there's going to be a lot of celebrations for his birthday and stuff. This is what he says about Bill Cosby. Now, Quincy and Bill Cosby go back a long way, to the beginning of Bill Cosby, okay? Because Quincy was there before Bill Cosby, okay? He says this about Bill Cosby. The interviewer asked him, but what about the alleged behavior of a friend of yours like Bill Cosby? Is it hard to square what he's been accused of with the person you know? And Quincy says, it was all of them. Brett Ratner, Harvey Weinstein, he's a jive motherfucker. Wouldn't return my 5 calls. A bully. About Harvey Weinstein, he says. And then, well, what about Cosby, though? The interviewer presses. What about it? Quincy comes back. Were the allegations a surprise to you? The interviewer says. Cosby said, and Quincy says, we can't talk about this in public, man. Well, I'm sorry to jump around, but if you could snap your fingers and fix one problem in the country, what would it be? And so he jumps around, and he didn't want to talk about that in public. And you know what Quincy Jones said? That the one topic that if he could snap his fingers and fix it, it would be racism. Racism. Still. Racism. Okay, and this man goes back to the 30s now, okay, when there was a different kind of racism, especially in the South. And the North had a hidden racism, but especially in the South. I mean, they were blatant, okay? And he says, yeah, man, I've seen it all happen. It's been a long time, going back to the 30s. We've come a long way, but we got a long way to go. The South was always fucked up. I'm using his language, guys. But you know where we stand. The racism in the North is disguised. And so he goes on to talk about racism. He goes on to talk about Trumpism. This is what he calls Trump. You guys that are lunatic left-wing loonies, you're going to love this, what he says about Trump. He says, what stirred everything up? Is it all about Trumpism? And this is what he says. You know, I'm a Trumpster, but I'm not afraid to talk it. Hey, man, it's Trump and uneducated uneducated rednecks. This is Quincy says. Yeah, Trump is just telling them what they want to hear. I used to hang out with him. He's a crazy motherfucker. Limited mentality, a megalomaniac, narcissistic. I can't stand him. I used to date Ivanka, you know. Oh, no. Yeah, he goes, Ivanka had some sweet-ass legs, right? And then he goes, yeah, wait. And the interviewer goes, wait, really? Wait a minute, right? He goes, yes, sir. 12 years ago, Tommy Hilfiger, you know, the clothing designer, Tommy Hilfiger, who was working with my daughter, Kildada, right? I think that's how, Kidada, said, Ivanka wants to have dinner with you. I said, no problem. Now, Ivanka's like 24, 25 then, right? Quincy's like 70 because he's 85, right? She's a fine motherfucker, Quincy says, right? She had the most beautiful legs I ever saw in my life. Wrong father, though. He's spilling the beans, man. He said, what about your friend Oprah being president? I don't think she should run. She doesn't have the chops for it. If you haven't been governor or a state or CEO of a company or military, you can't lead. And a sympathetic conductor, a sympathy conductor knows how to lead, but she would not be a good leader. You know, that's his feelings. But he goes on and on and on. He loves U2, but he thinks U2's music sucks now because Bono's so preoccupied with other stuff. He loves U2. He says the greatest song in the world that he ever did is We Are the People, the greatest production he ever did in the world. Cyndi Lauper gave him a lot of hard time because her jewelry kept banging into the microphone. She kept blaming everybody else. So he said, just sing the song and leave. And she did. And everybody else loved the song. He said the groups that really should have made it, that never made it, but did make it, but really had it, they were really great groups. The Brothers Johnson, remember them? They were so freaking great. James Ingram, he had a small career for a short period of time. He should have been greater. And
Just once.
And Tevin Campbell.
Well, this has been this whole hour's been by. It's been the whole Jesse T time.
No, it's just interesting. You guys can chime in anytime. I mean,
I thought we were done, man. Are we done?
About Quincy, man. You want to go home? Go home. I'll keep talking.
You can go down.
Quincy. It's interesting. It's interesting when you get an iconic person like this,
yeah, I mean, I'm
who
sure, like
tells
you said,
the
yeah,
truth.
he's been around, he's seen a lot of shit, yeah. But you know, why put people's business out there now?
Because he can and he doesn't care, and he's Quincy Jones and he's 85, and you know, for whatever reasons.
You don't need any of them.
You don't need any of them, but it gives you an insight to some of the real people that we know and talk about a lot from the outside. It gives you a little bit of insight how they think and how they move and how they react to things.
What do you say about Prince? Did you say anything about
Nothing. I didn't say anything about that. No, they didn't ask him about that. And you can go on and you can read about what he he talks about today's modern music. He thinks it's they're not musicians.
It's garbage.
They're not musicians.
You're right.
You know, and there's a whole thing about that that he discusses, but I just wanted to pull out some of the highlights of some of the important people that everybody knows.
Did you say anything about Babyface?
No, there's nothing in the article about that. Anyhow, it's kind of cool when someone spills the beans because really, who do you think killed Kennedy? Michelangelo?
I mean, it was an inside job, obviously. The government itself, I thought, whacked him. You know, because his agenda was going in a different direction than he wanted. So they, take the guy out.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Everybody that was on board with that whole program, the Kennedys, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they were all going in a different direction, and government just wasn't having it.
Do you think it was just because it wasn't going in the direction they wanted, or do you think that there was an ulterior motive that they really wanted to dominate the planet Earth, Dan the Man?
I think it might have been LBJ's crew.
Possibly so. There's a theory about that. I mean, Quincy talks about being Sam Giancana because of the double cross when the Bobby and him turned against the mafia when they became the presidency and the attorney general.
I think it was the Federal Reserve.
It could be a lot of things. I mean, in that respect,
he was trying to change that.
he did. Executive order. He signed an executive order for that.
I
And the stuff he says about Michael Jackson at the end, he says what really got to Michael at the end was the propofol. He couldn't get off it. That's he couldn't control that. But the things he says about Michael Jackson are interesting because we don't really know who Michael Jackson was. I mean,
That propanol's nothing. I mean, I laugh at it. You can quit it easy. I've done it 1,000 times.
Well, you must have been put under 1,000 times, that's for sure.
I still have rigor mortis in my pants, yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And when he talks about Frank Sinatra, he talks about Frank Sinatra opening up Las Vegas for Sammy Davis Jr., but also for Quincy Jones. They wouldn't let Quincy Jones in the 1960s into any of the hotels, and Frank said, "Don't worry about it." And so Frank,
he opened up doors.
He's opened up doors
in Vegas and Florida.
I mean, so how do we change that today? I mean, there's a reason for going down this path. How do we change what Quincy says? The number one problem today, if he could snap his fingers, is racism. How do we change that? It was racism in his time, it was racism before his time, and it's racism today. How do we change that? Because there are a lot of people think that racism is over with, that there's equality. Is there equality, Michelangelo, or is there not?
I think on some level they might be because there are a lot of people that kind of want to come together. But then on the other hand, I mean, there's still an old generation. You know what I mean? There's still, I don't think we'll probably get past that for probably another generation.
Do you think humans can ever get past being racist amongst each other because we aren't the same?
Well, there are a lot of differences. There are definitely a lot of differences. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, but we believe different things. We like different things. Everything's different.
Is that a cause to be racist, Dan the Man?
As Thunderclap Newman would say, we have got to get it together.
That's right,
now.
absolutely. But Lee, I mean, you don't have a mic, so you're going to have to speak up a little bit. But how does, according to Quincy, if racism is the number one thing from a guy who's pretty smart, been around the world, talked to everybody that you and I or anybody can ever imagine, how do we solve racism in this country?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, caller.
instead of looking at the glass like, half empty, let's look at it half full and celebrate what we have in common, not our differences.
Well, that certainly is. That's the beginning of being able to solve issues between people. But Lee, you've been around. I mean, you've been around the entertainment. You've been in multiple cities in the country working under all kinds of different media operations. How do we solve racism? You grew up in the South. You were born in the South, and you've been all around the country. If that's true, why have we become such a hateful nation of each other today?
I think racism has transcended into power and fear. Now, that might sound a little strange, but those who want to stay in power or to be powerful are fearful of the future. So people will do whatever they think is necessary to gain, regain, or keep or possess power.
Because right now we're seeing more hatred, more separation, more segregation, more violence, more profanity, more really abusive and abrasive statements made about each other for, it seems to me, just for the reason just to be able to make it, because you can do that today.
I don't know if it's more, or is it that it's exposed more through social media, through various types of technology that we have today that we didn't have in the 60s or the 50s or the 30s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s.
So your argument is the fact that it's always been here, yep, and is at the same level it's ever been, except we just have more access to see it and hear it.
And I think it's maybe
pretty much
a bit amplified now, because I can sit in the comfort of my car or my home and be a fool and get away with it.
And you are accountable for what you say or do. Yeah. You grew up in the East Coast, Michelangelo. I mean, your lineage, your bloodline is Puerto Rican,
yeah,
primarily.
Sure.
I don't know what you're mixed with, because we're all mixed with something.
Sure.
But did you, when growing up, did you experience racial epithets and activities that targeted to you when you were a kid growing up in the East Coast?
Well, yeah.
In
the
Florida?
Puerto Ricans were against the blacks were against the Puerto Ricans were against the Italians were against the Puerto Ricans. So that's my whole, that's, yeah, we got the Puerto Rican neighborhood, then we got the Dominicans came in, it was the Dominicans against the Puerto Ricans. So it was always a different culture of clashes, being raised in the South Bronx. So, yeah, it's always been, and it was actually more blunt back then. Now, like you say, people are more undercover about it and try to be more discreet about it. But it still goes on to today, And I think, there'll be another generation or two before it gets totally eliminated, because people are tired of it. And you see more and more different cultures come together in marriage and so on and so forth.
Well, are we really seeing different cultures coming together in marriage? I mean,
sure.
Because the primary cultures in America now, the bloodlines are of Hispanic, Oriental, or Asian.
Well, there are more mixed babies in the world.
Well,
there are a lot more mixed babies.
The Anglo mix is over with now. Yeah. It's gone. It's not coming here with any great immigration numbers. Mm-hmm. They're not coming here. So the people that are coming here are from a different part of the world. So our demographic and racial ideology is changing. Look, Italians married Jews, Jews married Polish, Polish married Germans, Russians married Puerto Ricans, and Puerto Ricans married Swedes, people from Sweden. Now we don't have as many of those people. We have more people from Central and South America and the Asian countries of the world. So I don't know if that has changed. The demographic of bloodline has changed, but I think it's a preeminent problem in our DNA as people when you study history, that racism was always going to be there. It's just I don't see it ever solving itself, and America's great experiment is still in effect. We're the greatest place in the world to live. At least we have the opportunity to try to be better, wouldn't you say?
Amen.
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 Amen, my brother.
So, hey, man, a crazy wound up show today. Easy for me to say.
I love you guys. Take care, and thanks again for having me.
Okay, thanks a lot, man. A crazy wound up show. Thank you very much. And we got off on a lot of topics, and Go check out that Quincy Jones. What do you got coming up, man?
Absolutely nada.
Okay, we got to get you some work.
Looking for some employment. Anybody, please. I need work.
Okay.
Dying.
Dan the Man.
Not a damn thing.
Wow. I'm going to get my hair cut tomorrow. Look at that. Freestyling right there.
Can I use the restroom now?
Go use the restroom. Thank you very much.
Good night, folks.
Good night, folks. The Jesse T Show. Straight on the point. The world according to Torrero. The Brown Bees off duty. See ya!